If I haven't explained this to you before, I love technology and I also hate it at the same time. I'd love to be a pastor not using technology and then use technology in all the other aspects of my life, and then sometimes I decide that that's not even worth it, and then I want to throw everything away and just start over. Yeah, live like a nomad,
Fun.
just like whatever I can carry on my back, no technology, off the grid. Love-hate relationships, kind of back and forth. All right, anyway, we're talking about warfare in the Bible. We've been doing this the last few weeks. It's a contextual thing. It's very much like preaching today. You heard, like, at the beginning of the sermon, I talked about kind of this pop philosophy that goes around talking about, like, how you make choices in life. Use that as kind of a jumping off point because Proverbs, the reading from Proverbs talked about there's all these paths of the wicked, but then there's the path of the righteous, right? And you have to choose, right? Which path are you going to go on? Obviously, you can't make that choice because you're a sinner. You always take the wrong path. It's Jesus who puts you on the right path. Which I could have said that probably at some point in the sermon. Yeah. Thought of it too late. Oh well. That's fine.
Well, I mean, it's in the catechism.
It is in the catechism. That's right. So you talk. Whenever you're preaching or teaching, you're always, you're speaking within a context, which means that if you don't, we have to dig a little bit into the context of the writings, maybe to understand, like, what words mean, right, or phrases, or illustrations that are used. Like, for example, Paul has this really crazy one. It was like, all Cretans are liars. It's in the book of Acts. It's like, all Cretans are liars. Cretans, people from Crete. Yeah, Cretans. Okay, I also have to turn off the it's going to shut itself off periodically thing. All Cretans are liars. Well, you've heard that before, right? Like, no, because you don't live in that world, right? You don't interact with people from Crete. You don't have any idea what does he mean, all Cretans are liars? That sounds like it's actually a terribly racist thing to say, doesn't it? Which of course it is. But it was a saying of the day, and so he uses it as an illustration. People understand, oh, I know what he means, right? All right, so we don't want this to shut off, right? That's the point?
Yes.
All right, auto lock, not 2 minutes. How about, you think 15 minutes is long enough? That's probably long enough. All right, now we can do this again. Screen mirroring, put it back up on the screen. Good. There we are. All right.
So what's that thing called?
This thing? This is just an iPad. Yeah. Oh yeah, don't let it do that either. That probably looked like fun up there. Well, this way, I see the same thing you see. Actually, that's kind of nice in a way. Let's see, what were we talking about? All Cretans are liars. What's another one that he talks about? Oh, we remember with Jesus, it's this one. Can anything good come from Nazareth? You're like, is that a real expression? Like, what's wrong with Nazareth? That sounds terrible. It does. Yeah, they say that about Jesus. Can anything good come from Nazareth? It's kind of a backwoods place up in near Capernaum in Galilee. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Yeah. I'm trying to think if we have a version of that that's horribly, toxic towards people group. We're not supposed to say any of these things anymore, I suppose. It's not politically correct. There's other kinds of contextual things, and of course, what we're talking about now is that Paul is living in a world, as well as all of his hearers, in a world that is ruled by the Roman Empire, right? And with the Roman Empire, there's occupying force everywhere, right? So they would station, legions in towns and centuries and for regions, right, to govern and to maintain the peace. Rome had an interesting expression which we can bring in. It's called the Pax Romanum. Any of you heard Pax Romanum? You have. Okay. The peace of Rome. So the way that Rome kept the peace is they said, and this comes up when you read the New Testament, is that you can believe, you can practice whatever religions you want, you can do whatever you want, as long as you say Caesar is king, Caesar is Lord. Yeah. So, like, for example, when Herod rebuilt the temple, he agreed with Rome to actually put the Roman insignia, the eagle, over the entrance to the temple. You're like, this is the Lord's temple. Well, Herod's not really a believer anyway. He's an imposter. But then he's like, you don't fly the Roman insignia over your church. Right? It'd be like us putting, instead of a cross on the top of our church, putting an American flag on top of the church. It doesn't make any sense, does it? We do have a flag, but the flag is actually lower than the altar. The altar is above, that's visually, right? That we're citizens of heaven first and foremost, and only by God's giving are we a citizen here on this earth of this country. All right. So, anyway, so Rome's a context for him. So people will understand these military kind of analogies because it's part of their day-to-day life. They have these daily encounters with Rome. This, of course, in the infancy story with Jesus, right? It's like, the whole world had to be taxed, meaning the whole Roman Empire was being taxed. People would know what that means because that happens periodically. You know when they would tax people? When they were going to war, right? It was just like the United States of America. There was no taxes until we had to go to war, and then there's taxes, right? And then you have 6 or whatever, 4, 6, 8, however, God even knows how much money we spent on Afghanistan, right? Trillions and trillions of dollars. That's your taxpayer dollar. Well, maybe it's not your taxpayer dollar because they probably just printed it. So it's your inflationary dollars. All right. So that's your context. See, I can talk about, see how I brought in, you see how we're talking about, you take things from your contemporary setting when you're preaching and teaching. So I bring up Afghanistan because, of course, it's what's going on right now. All right. So Paul does the same thing. Let's look, just to recap where we were last week. We're in Philippians 4. All right, and this is the conclusion of Paul's letter to the church in Philippi. So Philippians, church in Philippi. Yeah, grab a sheet if you want one. This is Ethiopian, by the way, in case you were wondering. Yeah. No, I still have a little bit of it left. It was the monthly coffee last week. So he says, verse 6, be anxious. Well, I could just read it off the sheet too. Never worry about anything. That's a kind of contemporary translation. But in every situation, let God know what you need in prayer and requests or supplication while giving thanks or with thanksgiving. Then God's peace, which goes beyond anything you can imagine or passes all understanding, will guard your thoughts or hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Thoughts and emotions through Christ Jesus. That's just a paraphrastic translation. Because in the ancient world, I don't know if you know this, now you will. What belongs in your heart? Thoughts. What do you think's in your heart? Emotions, right. But here, this is the seat of thoughts, right? So let your heart guide you means to not be guided by emotions, but by reason. And your mind is the dwelling place of emotion. Yeah, wisdom, knowledge, and also emotion actually sits in your gut, usually, which is weird. Yeah, you have a gut feeling. We still say that. When Jesus had compassion on the crowds, it says that his innards moved. That's a literal translation. We translate as compassion, but it's like his bowels were entangled. Well, you felt that, right? Where you get that churning? Yeah.
So thought is in your heart?
Yeah, thought. Wisdom, thoughts, actions. Right, so when Jesus says, out of the heart proceeds all manner of evil, he's talking about thoughts, deeds. He's not talking about it coming from emotion. It's coming from the things you're thinking. Yeah, I know. Now, we're very emotional people. Especially because we've been taught now, this is a side note, because we've been taught that there is no, I'm going to put this so I don't get any text messages. Because there is no truth, or truth is relative, or reality is whatever you make of it, and all these different ways people talk about it, right, today? Like what's true for you is not true for me. I make my own truth, that kind of thing. Then what that means is the only thing that people actually find compelling are emotional arguments. Not thoughtful ones, but emotional ones. Yeah. So you have to compel people, which is terrible, because it means that you actually just walk around guilting and shaming people for their behavior, because you can't actually convince them that, I don't know, that masks aren't very effective at controlling COVID, because they don't care about the data, they don't care about the studies, they only care about how it makes them feel. So make them feel bad about it. The plexiglass thing is the thing that really drives me crazy. You have those at your work, yeah. I know, you just have to do whatever they tell you. But it's do you think that actually is doing anything? You have this huge gap between the plexiglass. It's the virus doesn't care. It's basically a sneeze shield, right? Like at the salad bar. Which you probably should have that all the time anyway, because people come in and sneeze on you all the time, right? All right, just sorry to pick on you, Maureen. I know. Well, especially when you're working for like a national, whether it's the federal or it's just a national corporation like USPS, you basically don't get very much leeway locally, right? So it's the advantage of like our church body, for example, is very local. Each congregation, has extreme degree of latitude to do what's best for their local community, within the framework that Jesus gives, as you heard in the sermon, right? Preaching, teaching, baptizing, sacrament, that stuff, forgiveness. Okay. Paul uses, we talked about this last week, just to recap, uses the word for guard, and the word there for guard is, what is it? It's right there. Oh, look, it pops up for you too. Yeah, phureo, right? Oh, look, you can even see the fancy definition up there too. This is kind of fun. Ah, look at that. To watch, to guard. That's from Herodotus, all right? That's what HDT is. Yeah. To keep silent, to watch for, right? To guard, to watch, to be aware of. So remember, this is the watchtower language. This is a watchman at the gates, right? And think of the psalmist. How does he say? Set a watch or set a guard on my lips. Let not my heart incline to any evil thing. Have you heard that? It's in... It's in evening prayer, right? So we sing it during evening prayer. So that would be Psalm 141, which is, set a watch or a guard before my mouth, O Lord, and guard the door of my lips. Let not my heart incline any evil thing. So in the psalm, we actually ask God to be the one who sets the watch and the guard over, so that the evil inclinations of our heart doesn't come out our mouth, right? Yeah, right. And it's a military thing, We'll get more to that in a minute. Guard means not only to prevent hostile invasion, but also to keep the inhabitants who are under attack from running away or going AWOL, which we talked about last week. The military metaphor points to the protection that soldiers provide inhabitants of a city from enemies without and troubles within, right? So the watchman, the guard, is looking both directions for outside attack, but also watching inward for dissension, divisions, the things we talked about in the sermon, right? Were mentioned in the sermon anyway. One note, we talked about this in the Congregation of Prayer yesterday online, that and that list of things that I always hate reading that list from Paul, the works of the flesh. It's just terrible. Who wants to talk about orgies in church? But anyway, speaking of contextual, did I ever tell you this story? Oh, I brought it up. Okay, so I've told you. So we had a Higher Things conference at Vanderbilt University, which is in Nashville, right? And Vanderbilt isn't really, it's pretty secular. It's very secular. So I had to get there early because I was helping. I was doing, the technology stuff for them. And the hall where they were going to have the plenary speaker. So, they would have like one or two speakers that would do the big gathering teaching moments for this. This is a youth conference. The hall was being torn down from a previous event, right, when we get there. And I was like, well, what was in here? I'm just curious. What are you taking down for? And he's like, well, this is where we had our Roman orgy yesterday. I'm like, what? They actually have like a half-scale model of the Parthenon at Vanderbilt. So apparently they have like a Greek studies department or something. I don't know. Like seriously, it's like made out of stone, the whole deal, but it's like half size. It's for dwarves? I don't know. It's up on the hill. It's all lit up. Anyway, yeah, I'm like, what? And like, oh yeah, we have a whole group. They it's like it's basically like sexually permissive students for life or something. I don't know. Whatever the name of the group is. Yeah. So they just put it on. And the like campus is like, it's fine to have an orgy in this room. I'm like, I felt like we're gonna have to do some kind of like exorcism on this space before we use it. Woo-wee. What that? Those are your college campuses now. Now you know.
But did you hear about the university at Princeton that has an atheist as the
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, the new head chaplain is an atheist, which is actually. I mean, I commend them in this regard. Is that atheism is a belief. You believe that your God is no God, right? Yeah, right. It's not agnosticism where you're just not really sure. It's I believe in no God. my God is no God, that there is no God. The world is just a violent, terrible place, and we can make the best of it. That's kind of the belief. That is a belief set. So they probably want a chaplain for other atheists. It's just kind of weird calling him a chaplain, because it's like, what kind of comfort are you going to give? Right, and then you're going to oversee the other chaplains. This happens in the military too, though. So they have a code, though, that, and I'm sure Princeton probably had, was it Princeton? I think it was Yale. I think it was Yale. Yeah. Yale, by the way, interesting story. Yale was started contra Princeton because they said Princeton was too secular. So then they started Yale to be like the actual Christian university. And look at where it is now. Yeah, funny story. What did I bring up? Oh, yeah, in the military, they'll have, like a commanding chaplain, and it might be a Muslim and then overseeing Christians, but they have a code, right? And you don't trample on each other's, people. But sometimes a Christian has to try to provide comfort to a Muslim in the trench, Well, I don't know if we do trenches so much anymore, but, by the roadside or whatever. So, oh, that's funny. That's military. Look at that. All right, so now you got a little bit about guarding, right? And it's God the Holy Spirit who does this guarding. Now, I mean, we're on guard, right? As much as we can be, but we're equipped to be on guard by God's word, right? So God says, here's what you should be aware of. Let's not talk about orgies again. How about divisions and dissensions, which were we should look at that. What was I reading? Galatians 5, right? Now you get to see how the sausage is made up on the screen, right? Yeah. Let's see. Where's that whole list of fun stuff? There it is. All right. So look at what's right there. Dissensions. I don't know if you can see that. I can try to highlight it. Oh, look at that. Okay, there you go. Dissensions and heresies. Those are both actual spiritual terms. So he's not just talking about like earthly kinds of evil. He's talking about evil within the church too. So there's the works of the flesh evident in the congregation. Now, of course, if you read just a few of Paul's letters, you'll find that he's writing these letters to churches that have problems. So no wonder, right? Yeah, but dissensions. Usually the dissensions, my experience in the congregation, are pretty minor. It's like, I didn't like that hymn, Pastor. I'm like, okay. I mean, okay, fine. I mean, we can't make everybody happy.
So now where is this from?
This is from our epistle today. That's Galatians, 5:20. Heresy is to speak against the truth. We can pop up the definition though, because it's right out of the Greek, right? So, taking for oneself, a choosing a choice of election, and then you can see there number 5 definition, a sect. It's a break off, right? Yeah. But
isn't that what they said Martin Luther was?
Yep. Yeah, Martin Luther was a heretic, meaning he was teaching, he was choosing to teach contrary to God's word, is what they accused him of. Yeah, and he was making a break off. Dissension is a little bit different. That dikostasia, oh, that's a nice word, dikostasia, to stand apart, right? So that would be somebody in the congregation that says, I don't agree with what's going on here, and then especially if they take others with them, and then they stand apart, and then you end up with factions, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, I think most congregations actually know what these words mean. I mean, I didn't want to preach 2 sermons today, so I kept it where it was. But, we've talked about this before, that the flesh it has been crucified in baptism, but as Luther reminds us, or dies in baptism, is buried, that the old Adam is a damn good swimmer. So it keeps cropping up. And then so what you do is that each day, asking for forgiveness, you put that old Adam back under the water again, right? And drown and die, So we do this with the morning and evening prayer, right? We say, we thank him in the morning that he's kept us from evil, and at the end of the day, we ask his forgiveness for all the evil we've done. Like, rinse, repeat, baptismal rinse, repeat, right? Okay. Military, we're supposed to be talking military. All right, so I don't have another handout for you. That's the end of the handouts, but I do have some other places we should look. What's probably the most famous one? What's the most famous military one? It's probably Ephesians 6. So if you've got a Bible, you can go there. Otherwise, you can try to follow along on the screen. Oh, let's not put it. Look at that. That's not what we want. Sorry, maybe I do need to bring my laptop so you don't have to see all the sausage there. Let's see, where do we want to jump in? There it is. All right, so note the context here. I'm going to scroll up. First, you have all this orderly language. We talked about order, military orders, right? It's still up here. Paul uses this analogy then to talk about how the church has been ordered, right? You can't have everybody in charge in the church. This is one of the failings, I think, of our church body in a way. Because God doesn't actually tell us how to organize the church politically, how to govern ourselves. There's no prescription. There is for the state, but there isn't, and not even really for the state all that much either. Like you could have a monarchy, you could have a dictator. I mean, God's going to use either of them, right? But he doesn't tell us how to organize the church. Although he does say that there's overseers, there's pastors, there's overseers, right? And there's servants of the pastors, right? So there is some prescription, but actually then do you have a president, or do you have a board of directors, you have a board of elders, you have deacons? How do you govern? Doesn't really tell you too much. Why did I bring that up? Oh yes, but he puts it in order, puts the church in order for your blessing, for your benefit, right? Same thing with families, right? I mean, you don't have, I know it's not a popular opinion, but look, the best home for children is one with a mom and a dad. The psychology, all the sociological and psychological studies show that that's best for kids. And kids that grow up in broken homes, it is an obstacle. It's not always good for them, right? And that's where, of course, we as compassionate people come alongside and say, how can I help? I've even seen, especially when it's a single mother, that where you'll have men within the congregation that come alongside to help, even just helping around the house, or pastor in teaching the kids the faith, that kind of thing, right? So we can come alongside and help. And try to overcome some of that disadvantage. But it is a disadvantage. Right, Dorothy? Yep. And so I've seen, I had a classmate at seminary who died while he was at seminary and left behind wife and kids. And he had cancer. And then, Anne was friends with her, so then we kind of kept touch. And I'd say she actually used one of these online dating services. And within a year or so, she found another Lutheran guy, and he was without children, and they married, and now the kids have a dad, right? So, her first husband died while she was pregnant with their child, which was, she named him after him, though. So a way of remembering, it's beautiful. It's tragic and beautiful at the same time. All right, so we have. If you don't know how Ephesians runs here, Ephesians 5 is husband and wife, right? And then that's a picture of Christ and the church. Then you have Ephesians 6, which is children. Fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath, right? But bring them up. Here it is, just like we heard in church today, in the training and admonition of the Lord. And training, this is actually all military, so it can be military, it's at least schooling. Come on, pop up. Ugh. Doesn't want to pop up on training. All right, so I have to look over here. Verse 4. Oh yeah, it's paideia. Right, so this is the word for pedagogue. Pedagogy. It's the art of teaching, I think. It's usually is that how we'd say it? Oh yeah, that's not going to hurt her.
That's what she said.
Well, look, she's listening. We're talking about you, Dorothy. She loves chords. She's my daughter. And then admonition. And that's the new. It doesn't like that word either. It's not letting me pop it up. That is. It's okay. It's low voltage. It's not high voltage. It's fine. Seriously. You ever put your tongue on a 9-volt battery? It's not that big of a deal. Dorothy, they don't like you eating this. Look, if you crawl in here, you're just going to find more cables. Give her a toy or something, Leah. You're distracting me. All right, so we had husband and wife. Then we have parents and children. Then we have servants and masters, and we don't have to. I know people are really slavery's terrible. The Bible doesn't have quite as. It doesn't I think we can rightly say chattel slavery, like we saw here in the United States, where people were treated like animals. Is That's clearly against God's word. But being bound to someone to pay a debt that you owe them, that's actually, you're all kind of slaves if you have any kind of credit card debt. I mean, you're just slaves to the bank. It's dead. I mean, that's what it's looking like. Yeah, you have to work. You have to work. You ever feel like you have to go to work? It's kind of like bondage, slavery. Yeah, because you got all these bills you got to pay. Okay, it's the same thing. They were just much more open about it. All right, but then he has some instruction as to how to relate between masters and servants, which is fine. All right, and then the conclusion of all that is here, verse 9. So it's Ephesians 6, verse 9, or 10, I should say. And you've heard this before, but if this isn't military, I don't know what is. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, there you go, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. That's fun. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. That's all fun, right? The mentors. Really, seriously. Yeah. And the people with the mark. Who are the people with the mark? What was the? Yeah, the Death Eaters and the yeah. There you go.
How is that related to this?
It's Harry Potter's a spiritual analogy. She's a Christian. She's a Christian. Mostly. Anyway, therefore, take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand, therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness. This is all armor language, right? Having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace, above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you are able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, always praying with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit. All right? Praying, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. So there's that watching language, like we talked about with guard and watch. And for me, that utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that in it I may speak boldly, and I ought to speak. I have a feeling when Paul's writing, he's like, I like this analogy. I'm just going to push it as far as I can. It's like talk about all the different kinds of armament and warfare, right? All right, so here's the key. You get this armament. You receive all of this, what do we want to call it? Battle attire, I guess. It's a gift to you. It's given to you. It's given to every Christian. It's given by the Word. And the Spirit works these things through the Word for you, right? The only problem is if you choose to not wear it, right? Which, of course, we do. It's like, I don't want to put that on. This reminds me of the story with David, of course, and Goliath, right? And David has to try to wear Saul's armor. It's like, that doesn't fit. That's not going to work. All right, so we have all sorts of things going on here. Notice, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. That's the beginning of it, right? So who is the one who's fighting the battle? The Lord, right? Whose power is going to win the battle? The Lord, who's already won the battle, right? This is the same picture you see in the like say the conquest of Canaan with Joshua. Who actually defeats and conquers the enemies of Canaan? The angel of the Lord, who goes before the army. The army just comes in and cleans up afterwards. So I've likened, the Christian life in this world is really just after the death and resurrection of Jesus is really just kind of a mop-up battle. It seems like we're fighting this great and cataclysmic battle, but the battle's already been fought and won. Death has been defeated. We're just we're waiting as patiently as we can for the final consummation of all that has already been happened. So it's kind of like, well, to use Afghanistan again, because it's contemporary, I don't know if you know this, but there's actually large portions of Afghanistan that's fighting back against the Taliban. You don't see it in the news. They don't talk about it. There's a whole region to the north. The Pashtun. Yeah, Pashir. These are our allies that we abandoned there. Not happy about this. But there's reporters on the ground. It's a famous one that I follow, and she keeps sending back images. They're trying. They're on. They got the internet. They're trying to let you know. They're sending back images. They're talking about how they're poorly equipped. They need help. But no, we're just going to abandon them. She found more cords, by the way.
We give them all of our.
Yeah, well, we gave the Taliban. You gave the Taliban, but not our allies that are fighting against the Taliban. Yeah, Dorothy. These aren't even plugged in, so it doesn't even matter. Anyway, I mean, so that's just an analogy for you, right? Is to say, maybe broadly speaking, the Taliban has pretty much taken over Afghanistan, but the battle's not over. I mean, maybe the victory's been won. They can declare victory, but they haven't finished their fighting, right? And the Christian life is like that, right? Christ has already defeated sin, death, and devil, and yet there are still these skirmishes, right, daily, until finally on the last day, sin, death, and devil are finally, for us, are finally ended. You're going to find some sheets, some paper, whatever. Don't worry about her. Don't worry about her. Well, part of our problem, of course, is that we're temporal beings, right? So we're in time. So we haven't seen the end. We've been told what the end is like, but we haven't seen it. We haven't experienced it yet, right? But from Christ's perspective, who is the Alpha and the Omega, beginning and the end, he defeated the devil, and sin, death, and devil. He put all things under his feet at the cross, which is for him the last judgment too. So we're in that in-between time.
What do you think that is going to be like?
I just use whatever the Bible says about it, which sounds pretty terrible, actually. Yeah. When Jesus says, he uses the destruction of Jerusalem by Rome, the Roman government in AD 70 as the picture, right? You don't even want to be nursing infants in those days. And we talked about that, 5 weeks ago or something? It would have been 4 weeks ago. It was Trinity 10. Is when we hear about the destruction of Jerusalem as our gospel reading. This is the gospel of the Lord. Everybody's going to die. It's always kind of, it's recorded in the Gospels, but it's not really all that great of good news, is it? And I read some of the destruction of Jerusalem here in Bible study from Eusebius. Yeah, I mean, they resorted to cannibalism. I mean, it's really terrible because Rome surrounded them and just tear things apart. It's all good. Good. All right, so look at here. The Lord has won the battle, and then put on the whole armor of God. It's already presumed that you have it. Just you have to put it on, right? That you may be able, and by the way, when we talk about may, I hate that word in English, just because it's not all that helpful. In Greek, which you can see over there, right? The word is undefthesestha, which is hard to say. It's just imperative. Oh no, what did I say was may? Put on, that you may be able, right? Put on, where was it? Verse 11. It jumped on me. There it is. Put on the whole armor of God, that you, this is tense, either middle or passive. Might or may is how we usually translate it in English. So, that you be able, by the Lord's giving, to stand against the wiles of the devil is how I would translate it. All right. So what are the wiles of the wiles? That's a funny word. What does it say there if I click the little 2? What do you think? This thing is not doing what it's supposed to do. Wiles. Wake up. There we go. Schemings. Ooh, that's a fun word. Yeah. Does the devil scheme? Here's the other thing about talking about spiritual warfare. You landed on my foot. It's okay. Here, I'm just going to set you down nice and gentle. There you go. Do you want me to pick you up? All right, good. The schemings, the wiles. The devil is God's devil is another famous saying from Luther. Meaning he's already, his power is limited. This is in the Old Testament with Job. You see it there. You see it in the New Testament too, right? That the devil can only, think about with the casting of the, we read this in Mark's Gospel probably a couple weeks ago, right? 4 or 5 weeks ago. When he cast the legion into the swine, they ask him to be cast into the swine because they don't want to be without a body. Right? Demons want to occupy someone or something. Right? So they can't, they're subject, they call him Lord. The demons are subject to God. We forget this. We think that Yes, they scheme and try to work against God, but they're under his authority. So the idea that we're like somehow powerless against our own sin, against the wild schemes of the devil, against the evil in this world, that's actually one of the devil's lies. God's equipped you with all the armor, everything that you need to quench the fiery darts of the evil one, right? That's what it said. And yet we act as if the devil is like an equal authority and power, as powerful as God is. It's like, no. Hi, Dorothy. Yeah, I know. Don't pull my beard. That's her favorite thing to do. I'm going to have to get rid of it. But I think it'd be worse if it's shorter. I don't know. So notice, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, meaning people. All right? Even when the enemy is a person, what's the problem? Is it the person themselves? Or rather, the ideology, the lie, the false belief that they're held captive to? Right? So, yes, there is demonic affliction. I don't know if you've ever watched like any of the Antifa riots. Have you ever watched any of these things? You know, these normally young people, and then other kinds of ex-cons and other terrible, people who've done terrible things. They're not terrible people. They've done terrible things, right? And you look at it, and sometimes it is truly demonic, the things that they say and want to do.
Wait, what are you saying?
Antifa, the rioters, like last summer. It's like willfully going about and destroying other people's property. It's an ideology, but it's a lie, right? Because the truth is that God gives property to people, and that according to like the seventh commandment, right? Preserve your neighbor's possession and income, right? And to actually destroy it and say that's like reparations or whatever lies they were saying. It's a teaching of demons. It's a teaching of demons. Yeah.
But they too, they're lying about it.
Yeah, it's true. Destroying their reputation, right? So that's the problem with evil, is that a lot of people actually, if you go on the internets, I know it's kind of dangerous, but go. You can either do this on Facebook or Twitter. Go to like pick your favorite like local politician. Probably the best example of that. Most examples of this is Senator Ron Johnson. So look at something he posts and then read the comments. And I mean, it's truly evil. The things that people say to him and about him and against him. I mean, regardless of whether, it's not a charitable way. You're not going to actually convince him, or you're not going to, like, if he's done wrong, if you believe he's like actually broken the law, then you do what you need to do, right? Present the evidence. He's held to account by the law, but it's not that. It's literally people who are held captive to an ideology that just hate him with like Fifth Commandment, like murderous kind of way.
Even some of the commercials.
Oh yeah, well, they just say, that's just political speech. Remember what like Vice President said about our current, president, resident in chief? Yeah, the things she said, and then they asked her about it. Like, you said these terrible things about like Tara Reid and the sexual abuse that he's been accused of. You're like, you said he was a rapist and whatnot. And she's like, yeah, it's just politics.
Yeah.
You don't accuse somebody of that. Isn't that incredible? It's just politics.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Anyway, what were we talking about? Yeah, we're not wrestling against people. Some people, though, maybe, not to pick on any particular examples, might actually be truly held captive to not only demonic teachings, but actual demons, right? And we're just naive to think that this doesn't ever happen anymore. One of the most notable places of this is if you try to talk to a pro-abortion activist person. Not somebody who's like there are more liberal-minded, compassionate, like, people, but the people who are like we should be able to kill children all the way up until they come out the birth canal, right? And just like, and violent, almost violent in speech about this. You're so under the sway of this idea that you won't even listen. It's not even just emotional anymore. It's because it's past even the point of like a reasonable kind of emotional response. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to call it, but demonic. Again, we don't want to damn the person, right? It's always a call to repentance. But then again, God also sends his like into Canaan, these are unbelievers that are violently opposed to God and his word. And what does he do to them? He wipes them out. Not only them, but before that, actually everybody who had rebelled against God, who were even his chosen people in the wilderness, died in the wilderness and didn't get to go into the promised land, right? Hopefully in the resurrection, but not the earthly one. All right, so again, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against, these are just all really highly technical terms here. We've got what? Flesh, it's blood and flesh. I don't know why they changed the words. The word order is blood and flesh, by the way. But against the principalities, it's the archies. It's the leader, commanding officers. Against the, what was the other word? Powers. It's actually authorities. So against the ruling leaders, the authorities, and then this is a weird word. The cosmokratoros, the lords of this world. How do they translate it? The rulers of the darkness of this age. I don't know. It's the rulers it's the rulers of this world and the darkness of this age, right? Worldly rulers. Now remember, like when Jesus is tempted by Satan in the wilderness, what does Satan promise him? Things that Satan actually can deliver to him. What? Right? Look at all these kingdoms. Just bow down to me and you can have authority over them. And you're like, wait a minute. So Satan actually, he has authority over the kingdoms of this world? Yeah, if this world's been consigned to destruction, right? So again, what are we wrestling against? Not against flesh and blood, but against evil powers. Yeah. So this is why what we see as real as Christians, there's like multiple levels, right? We see people doing stupid things, like being inept and just unqualified. I mean, this is like Obama's B team is running the show today. This is the JV squad. Yeah, I mean, they're not even that great at it, right? Yeah, but a lot of these things they tried before. Anyway, that's side note. But you look at it and you're like, that's ineptitude, and yet they're tools, is what we would believe as Christians, as all political leaders are at times, tools that the devil uses to bring about hurt, harm, suffering, pain, unbelief ultimately, right? What does he want more than anything is that for you who believe that Jesus is the Lord of heaven and earth, King of kings, Lord of lords, to believe that he's not, right? And that even the demons aren't under his sway. And this terrible stuff that's happening all the time around the world, that you're powerless to it. And to some degree you are, right? If it happens at a federal level, even at a state level, there's not much you can do about it. But you do have authority here in this congregation. You probably have authority in your community, whether it's Random Lake or Adel, right? Or the township. I mean, you have authority over your family, right? You can at least watch and guard after them and defend them with whatever means you have. Right now, you could still arm yourself. I suppose that's one way. But even with words, right? With ideas, give your family better ideas, right? You don't like what the state's doing, then live apart from the state. Live in a different way. I've argued that we should set up our own currency for our little community. No, I mean, we could. Because we could cover most of the bases, like here. We have most resources that we need. Not everything. We still have electricity and other things that we need externally. But we've got the farmers, we've got the crops, and we've got workers, we've got tradespeople. We just need a means of exchange, some kind of currency that we agree upon its value. And then, what? Chamber bucks. Yeah, we'll just use chamber bucks. I like it. Just use the chamber bucks. We already have it. Look at that. Didn't even have to invent it. It has no value except for the value that we give to it. Right? Yeah, exactly. That's all currency is anyway.
Years ago when I worked at Greer's,
yeah.
they had a rubber buck. It was actually like rubber.
It was attached to the bottles or something? Or?
No, nothing. If we gave them a hint or something, how to do something, make something better, or suggestions, we get a rubber buck.
Oh, was it like an incentive in the workplace for good behavior?
If they gave something for so many bucks or what later, I just
All right, so anyway, back to the story. So we have rulers, authorities, cosmic rulers over the darkness of this present age, and not only of earthly rulers, right, but of this present age, but also we have the scotus, where is it? Oh, I lost my place. The pneumamaktia, which are the spiritual authorities, spiritual hosts, the spiritual armies actually, in the heavenly places. Wickedness. Oh, there's porneros in there too, of wickedness in the heavenly places. So, I mean, it's a pretty significant battle, is it not? Right? If you've basically got everything stacked against you, except for you have Jesus. Right? And you have all the armaments that he gives, right? So therefore, verse 13, therefore, for this reason, or through this, take up all the armaments of God. The word is panopleon. We have a word, English word from that. Panoply? You know what I'm talking about? Panoply. That's the word. I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Panoply? What is a panoply? It's like all the stuff attached to something. Right. So here it is. It's the shield, the helmet, the breastplate, the greaves, the sword, the lance. It's the full suit of armor. Right. That's what it means. It's all the stuff. Take up the whole armor of God that you may be able. Again, not a big fan of may, because may sounds like might. Maybe. No, so that you are able, by God's giving, to withstand in the evil day. It's actually the day of the evil one. Is there an evil day? Yep. And having done all, to stand, which is another, that has a military idea, right? Both feet planted, armed. Bring it on, right? Now that takes courage. Where does courage come from? Alcohol, drinking, right? Liquid courage. No? Jesus, right. Yeah, having confidence that Jesus has already won the victory. And he's given you everything you need for the war, for the battle. I've been thinking a lot about this, and this is why we did this Bible study, is that I was raised in kind of a weird time in the church, the 80s. It was a weird time for everybody, but the world was like Cold War. There was constant, like we were still doing like, what do you call it when you have to duck under your desk? That was tornado drills, probably. No, tornado, we had to go down the basement. You have to go under your desk. That was for like bomb threats, right? I was still doing that growing up. Yeah, we'd have the drills. Well, part of it was we were at Purdue, so you figure that if they're going to attack like places of engineering, intelligence. They're not going to go after the farm. They don't care about the farmers. They'll attack the major metros and the places where there's centers of learning and development. Especially military, Purdue with aviation, right? And rocketry, science.
Even our daughter in her classroom up in Berlin, they have St. John.
Mm-hmm.
Last year she didn't have so many kids, like maybe 12, I think. And she said if there would have been whatever alert coming,